Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into a chilling mystery that will leave you speechless. Gene Hackman, a legendary Hollywood icon, lived a life of fame and success, but in his final years, he left behind a secret message that few have ever discovered. A haunting and enigmatic message, caught on footage that has never seen the light of day. Was it a farewell? A final confession, or a cryptic clue to something far more sinister? Stay with us as we reveal never-before-seen footage of Gene Hackman's final days and unravel the mystery hidden within his last message. No one could have foreseen that a Hollywood legend, seemingly immortal, would not fade in glory, but be consumed by a chilling tragedy. Gene Hackman, once a towering figure of fame, left behind a legacy not etched in ink, but in the echoes of his anguished final moments. His passing was anything but peaceful. He was trapped within his own mind, suffocated by love, isolation, and unseen forces pulling the strings. Yet the most harrowing part isn't his death. It's what he left behind. A classified recording shrouded in secrecy where Hackman lays bare his terror, his vulnerability, and a desperate cry for freedom. Who reduced a Hollywood legend to a trembling plea for mercy? Who stripped him of his final control? Was it love, or a hidden force orchestrating his downfall from the shadows? This secret was never meant to be buried, and now it's about to come to light. Santa Fe, New Mexico, a land of sun-scorched hills stretching beneath an endless sky, where the sunset turns red rocks to gold. Amid this tranquil beauty, a Hollywood legend quietly vanished. Gene Hackman. Audiences knew him for his cold, commanding presence in Unforgiven, The French Connection, and The Conversation. More than an actor, he was a symbol of a ruthless cinematic era where talent had to fight for its place in the spotlight. Yet while many of his peers clung to fame with final roles or surprise comebacks, Hackman chose a different path. After announcing his retirement in 2004, he disappeared entirely. No interviews, no events, no nostalgic career retrospectives. The world knew only one thing. He had retreated into seclusion with his second wife, Betsy Arakawa, in a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Santa Fe, a place he called the Land of Wind and Silence. If this story has you hooked, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you never miss our upcoming videos and other mind-blowing mysteries. Share your thoughts on Gene Hackman's final message in the comments. We'd love to hear your take, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our latest releases. Locals soon gave the house a chilling nickname, the Silent Villa. Not just for its extreme seclusion, but for the eerie presence that seemed to shroud it. Delivery drivers rarely saw its owners, with staff receiving only curt notes instructing them to leave packages at the gate. Even neighbors, living mere meters away, almost never caught a glimpse of Hackman stepping outside. From this silence, speculation ran wild. Some believed he was secretly penning an unpublished memoir. Others whispered that he was recording his final thoughts to speak to future generations. And then there were the rumors. Claims that Betsy Arakawa had orchestrated his complete severance from Hollywood through a silent pact. The truth never surfaced, for the Silent Villa remained locked away from prying eyes. But in 2023, a seemingly insignificant detail slipped through the cracks. A plumber hired to fix a leak caught sight of something on Hackman's desk, an old tape recorder with a handwritten note, "Final words, private." No one knew what was on that tape, but what followed would only deepen the sense of unease surrounding the villa. Gene Hackman, once a name etched in the public consciousness, had slipped into an unsettling silence. He canceled all routine health checkups and ignored messages from longtime colleagues. When a journalist reached out with a letter asking about his well-being, the only response was a single sheet of paper, blank except for 3 hastily scrawled words: "Leave me be." In his final interview in 2004, Gene Hackman declared, "I've played enough men full of regrets. I'm not willing to become one of them in real life." Yet in the quiet seclusion of his sun-drenched Santa Fe villa, he seemed to have transformed into the very characters he once portrayed, isolated, somber, and burdened by an untouchable secret. His wife of over 30 years, Betsy Arakawa, remained just as silent. She refused interviews, never appearing alongside him, even on the rare occasions he stepped outside. Rumors swirled that Betsy was the only one who knew of Hackman's final recording, his last reflections on love, his career, and the unseen shadows that had loomed over his life. But the most chilling detail? The timing. The recording was made in early 2024 as Hackman entered his most vulnerable years. Had he sensed something coming? Did he know his time was slipping away, or had the silent villa itself become a prison, trapping him in a monologue with the ghosts of his past? No one has the answers, but one thing is certain. The silent villa was more than just a home. It was the final witness to a legend. Its walls, its shadowed corners, and the restless wind that swept through them carried stories left untold. And somewhere, hidden away, that mysterious tape still exists, a missing piece in the puzzle of Gene Hackman's final days. His final photo captured a frail figure in a worn sweater, his gaze fixed on the vast New Mexico sky, like the closing frame of a once glorious Hollywood saga. No flash, no applause, just a man standing alone in the quiet twilight of his life. And beneath the Santa Fe night sky, where the stars weave a silver net over the dry red earth, the silent villa still stands, as hushed and enigmatic as the man who called it home for over 30 years. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa endured the relentless sun and fierce winds of the American Southwest, presenting to the world the image of a perfect couple, humble, devoted, and far removed from the glare of Hollywood. But behind the rugged stone walls of their Santa Fe villa, their story was far more complex. In the dim glow of candlelit dinners, just the two of them, a fragile and unspoken bond took shape, one woven from love, possession, and an unnamed obsession. In time, it became known as the Final Pact. Betsy Arakawa, a petite Hawaiian woman, once a graceful pianist with soft, knowing eyes, carried within her a soul shaped by loss and separation. When she met Gene Hackman in the 1980s, it wasn't his fame or the prestige of a veteran star that captivated her. It was something deeper, something desperate. She clung to him not as a lover chasing stardom, but as if he were the last anchor keeping her from drifting into an endless abyss. Their love was undeniable, but the more intense it became, the more perilous it grew. Friends of Hackman later admitted that after he fell into Betsy's world, doors slowly began to close. Phone calls went unanswered. Invitations were ignored. Gene Hackman, once a fixture in Hollywood's inner circles, faded into the background, drifting further from the people who had stood beside him since the earliest days of his career. "I'm not leaving Hollywood, I just want to belong somewhere else," Gene once admitted in a rare moment of candor. But those who knew him best understood that somewhere else meant by Betsy's side, where he was willing to surrender everything for the peace he found in her eyes. Yet their story was never as simple as it seemed. Whispers from Hackman's old friends painted a different picture, one of a love that was anything but uncomplicated. Betsy wasn't just devoted, she was consumed by a fear that haunted her, that Gene would one day leave, just as so many others had abandoned her before. And to prevent that, she took control of everything. Every breath, every relationship, every name in his contact list. Nothing escaped her influence. Even Gene Hackman's own children from his first marriage weren't untouched. His 3 children became an unspoken tension between them. Once frequent calls between father and daughter grew rare. Letters went unanswered, and the distance between them widened. No one dared to say outright that Betsy had intervened, but at the same time, no one could deny the quiet, invisible force shaping every decision Gene Hackman made. The most terrifying part wasn't just the control, it was what they had agreed to do with each other. A secret survival pact, known only to them as the final PCT. No one knows exactly when it began, but scattered fragments of the truth surfaced in the hushed recollections of old friends. One quiet night in Santa Fe, beneath a sky strewn with stars, Gene and Betsy sat together in the villa's garden and made a solemn vow. If one of them passed first, the other would never be left alone. It wasn't spoken as a romantic promise, but as an unbreakable pact, an unspoken agreement that bound them together, no matter the cost, no matter what the future held. The puzzle pieces started falling into place when a quiet discovery was made. Betsy kept a strong sedative in the drawer of her bedside table. Gene Hackman, a man who had never struggled with severe insomnia, had been taking it regularly for years. Then there were the strange, restless nights, times when Gene would sit by the window, whispering incoherent words, trapped in dreams he couldn't escape. Dreams that perhaps weren't dreams at all. An old friend, one of the last still in touch with Gene, once recalled, "I overheard them talking once. They weren't arguing, but it felt like they were planning something neither of them wanted to say out loud." No one dared to ask Gene Hackman directly about the final PCT. Did it truly exist? And if it did, was it a pact of love or a chain forged by a shared, unspoken fear of separation? Beyond Santa Fe, silence reigned, the high desert wind carrying the scent of dry earth and scorched grass. But inside the silent villa, only 2 souls remained, bound together by a secret they never shared. Time moved strangely there, heavy and unrelenting, wrapped in an eerie stillness that no one could quite explain. Betsy Arakawa, the petite woman Gene Hackman loved so fiercely, was she his guardian angel or the one who bound his soul in the final years of his life? And Hackman, a man who once embodied strength and control on screen, had he unknowingly become a prisoner in his own marriage? The truth remains buried somewhere within the unfinished puzzle of the final PCT. Santa Fe. Deep in winter, the dry wind howled through the half-open doors of the old stone villa, once the secluded refuge of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. Now, it stands as a sealed box, locked away with rumors and chilling whispers about the final days of a Hollywood legend. But what haunts the public isn't just Gene Hackman's death, it's his final recording, a mystery yet to be unraveled. No one knows for certain if the recording truly exists or if it's merely a myth, but the stories surrounding it have taken on a life of their own, more powerful, more haunting than any of Hackman's classic films. Those who visited the Santa Fe villa before that fateful day speak in hushed tones of something hidden, something Gene Hackman tried to reveal in the last moments of his life. It wasn't a hastily scribbled letter or the scattered thoughts of a 95-year-old man lost in the familiarity of his walls. It was something far more chilling, a trembling voice, raw and fragile, woven with labored breaths and the unmistakable weight of fear. "If you're hearing this, I'm sorry." The recording began with an apology, one without a beginning, without an end, without a clear destination or explanation. The words lingered, spoken in the raspy voice that had once commanded the screen, the voice of Gene Hackman. But this time, it wasn't Lex Luthor or any other legendary character. It was a man staring into the void, confronting his own fate. When the forensic team entered the mansion after a delivery person's calls went unanswered, they stumbled upon a scene that would haunt them forever. Everything was eerily pristine. The dinner table set for two glasses facing each other, with only a few drops of amber-colored wine left behind. There were no letters, no books, no documents, just an old tape recorder resting atop a pile of crisp white napkins. The device wasn't powered on, no one had touched it, yet it felt like a carefully placed prop, waiting to be discovered by the right hands. When an investigator hesitantly pressed play, the room held its breath. Nothing. No sound, no message, just an empty memory card, wiped clean of whatever had once been there. But buried in the internal report, a single chilling detail stood out: a lone silver hair nestled at the bottom of the tape recorder. According to stories whispered within the Hackman family, Gene had stopped writing by hand in his 90s, his once steady grip faltering due to age. Instead, every night before bed, he would switch on a tape recorder and speak into the silence, scattered memories of Hollywood, fleeting thoughts, and tender musings about Betsy. Then one day, he stopped. Betsy was the one who took the tape recorder and locked it away in the safe inside her bedroom. To a trusted housekeeper, she simply said, "This is better this way." No one knew what she meant, but from that moment, the house grew eerily still. Some claim that Gene's daughter, Leslie Hackman, once hinted at having a copy of the recording, but her absolute silence since has only fueled deeper speculation. Was the tape more than just a farewell? Could it have been an accusation, a secret pact? Or was it something far more chilling, a final desperate plea to escape? Did the tape recorder ever truly exist? Or was it merely a phantom, a lingering specter in the minds of those left behind? The answer remains lost in the fog of uncertainty. While investigators uncovered no recordings, they did note something deeply unsettling about the home where Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa spent their final moments. It wasn't the scene of a sudden tragedy. It was something else entirely. The house didn't feel lived in. It felt staged. Every object, every chair, every framed photo was arranged with such eerie precision that it seemed less like a home and more like a meticulously designed set. The lighting was dim, filtered through drawn curtains, casting long shadows across a room frozen in time. On the dining table, two glasses sat perfectly aligned, facing each other, untouched, symbols of a moment orchestrated down to its finest detail. There were no signs of chaos, no evidence of an abrupt departure. Instead, the silent villa had become the backstage of a fateful play, a performance with no encore. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were the lead actors, bound by a script only they knew, while fate remained the only audience watching in silence. Of all the faces that emerged after the doors of the silent villa were sealed, none lingered in the public's mind more than Leslie Hackman. She did not weep, plead, or attempt to explain the unexplainable. Instead, she left behind a single statement for the press, words that only deepened the mystery. My father was a storyteller, and even in his final moments, he told the story he wanted to tell. No recording, no cries for help, no shocking truth buried beneath the pristine walls of the Santa Fe mansion. No one knows exactly what happened, and it is this silence that remains the most chilling evidence of all. When the Hollywood lights dimmed and the door to the silent villa closed forever, one question lingered in the minds of those left behind. What did Gene Hackman say on his final night? And more importantly, there are moments in life that slip by unnoticed, forgotten in the passage of time. And then there are moments that become legendary, not because they are loud, but because they vanish so completely from reality that they leave only whispers behind. That's what people say about the eerie final weeks inside Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's Santa Fe mansion. The neighbors had long grown used to the couple's reclusive lifestyle. But this was different. The house wasn't just quiet. It was sealed off, as if the outside world no longer existed. No mail, no deliveries, no visitors, not even the longtime staff who had once moved discreetly in and out. For weeks, the silent villa became exactly that. Silent. The iron gate at the foot of the hill remained firmly shut, its electronic lock always engaged, and the security cameras still pointed outward, standing watch over the desolate road. But buried within those silent recordings lay a chilling anomaly. Every single exterior camera of the mansion ceased functioning at exactly 5:32 p.m. on February 14th. No glitches, no tampering, no forced shutdown. They simply disconnected, as if an unseen hand had pulled the plug, severing the house from the outside world in an instant. From that moment on, Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa didn't just retreat into solitude. They vanished. Information from the local pharmacy uncovered a series of puzzling transactions in the months leading up to the mansion's eerie isolation. Large quantities of tranquilizers, painkillers, and powerful sleeping aids were repeatedly prescribed under the names of Gene and Betsy. Yet, not once had either of them been seen picking up the orders. Every delivery was dropped at the mansion's gate, never inside. But the most unsettling detail? Among the medications were prescriptions typically reserved for terminal cancer patients, drugs meant for those preparing for a journey with no return. Yet Gene Hackman's medical records told a different story. No cancer, no diagnosis of a degenerative disease, no documented mental illness. So if he wasn't sick, what were these medications for? When investigators forced their way into the house after a missing persons report, they encountered a chilling paradox. The front door was locked from the inside. The antique lock was intact, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of tampering. Inside, everything was undisturbed. The furniture, the family photos, the carefully placed objects, all frozen in place, untouched by time or chaos. Yet the air was thick, heavy with something unspoken, as if the walls themselves had absorbed a secret too vast to reveal. The silent villa had become something more than a home. It was a tomb for the past, a place where time had stopped, where the truth lay buried just beyond reach. A book Gene had been reading lay face down on the armchair, beside a cold cup of tea, its surface glazed with a thin layer of condensation, untouched for days. Clothes were neatly folded, yet never worn. The refrigerator was stocked with food, but no meals had been prepared. The bedside lamp remained on, casting a dim glow day and night, yet the double bed looked as if no one had slept in it. These final weeks weren't just a period of isolation. They were something far more unsettling, a limbo between life and death, a space where people existed, but never truly lived. A room on the second floor, once filled with the soft notes of Betsy's piano, had undergone a haunting transformation. The piano was gone. In its place stood a long table draped in white cloth, meticulously arranged with objects that told an unsettling story. A thick notebook lay open, not filled with music to be played, but with a list of Gene and Betsy's favorite songs, seemingly intended for something ritualistic. A large medicine box, divided into precise compartments, held powerful painkillers, 2 sealed envelopes nameless and untouched. Everything in the room resembled an altar, not for remembrance, but for preparation. Every object, every breath, every carefully placed detail revealed no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no external interference. The evidence pointed to only one conclusion. Gene and Betsy had locked themselves inside the silent villa, orchestrating a deliberate exit. But why? Why would a Hollywood legend, a man who once stood proudly on the red carpet, an immortal icon of the silver screen, choose to vanish behind cold stone walls? Why would 2 people who had shared a lifetime together carry out this unsettling ritual of self-isolation? Were they running from something? Or had they cast themselves in their final, most enigmatic performance? A play with no audience, no applause, only absolute silence? The eerie weeks slipped away as if they had never existed. All traces erased. All witnesses silent. Even Leslie Hackman, the only person Gene had called before the police broke down the door, stood motionless in the empty room, her eyes fixed on the lifeless wall. She uttered only one thing. They wrote the script. I couldn't change it. Perhaps those weeks will remain forever sealed. A shadowed space where memory, fear, and truth intertwine, waiting for someone bold enough to step through the final door. Was it love? Salvation? Or simply a gilded cage? That question followed Leslie like a ghost as she stood on the porch of the Santa Fe estate, watching the heavy wooden door close behind the forensic team. The father she once knew, strong, unwavering, was now nothing more than a fractured legacy, a puzzle with missing pieces. And with each step, she took into this final mystery, the past unraveled, slipping away like brittle pages in the wind, leading her into a story she had never truly understood in nearly 3 decades. Betsy Arakawa had always been portrayed as the quiet, devoted wife, standing by Gene Hackman's side, offering unwavering support. But as Leslie Hackman unraveled the unsettling details of his final weeks, a different reality came into focus. Betsy wasn't just a companion. She may have been the one pulling all the strings. Leslie's search led her to Gene's medical records from Santa Fe hospitals and his personal doctor, revealing something deeply troubling. Though Gene remained mentally capable of making decisions about his own treatment, he never did. Every prescription, sleeping pills, tranquilizers, potent painkillers, was issued under Betsy's name. Gene never personally requested a single one. Betsy signed for them. Betsy picked them up. Betsy controlled the key to the medicine cabinet. And it didn't end there. Betsy dictated every part of Gene's life. His meals were meticulously planned, each calorie carefully counted. Visitors were restricted or outright turned away. Every rule, every choice, she was the one enforcing them. The question that now tormented Leslie wasn't just how her father spent his final days, but who truly decided how his story would end. At first, Leslie thought it was love, the love of a devoted wife for her sick husband. But the deeper she dug into the notes, the more she realized that the emails between Betsy and the medical team were not just expressions of concern. Gene shouldn't watch the news for too long. Gene should avoid people who might upset him. Gene should take this medication instead of that one. These instructions painted a picture of absolute control. No decision, no matter how small, was made without Betsy's approval. Even the way Gene was to think about his own death was controlled by her. Leslie clearly remembered Gene Hackman at the height of his career. Strong and unyielding, no one could control his thoughts. He chose roles on instinct, bluntly turning down multi-million-dollar scripts just because he didn't like them. He was willing to argue with directors, even walk off set if he felt disrespected. But as he grew older, that image seemed to fade. In his final interviews, Leslie saw her father speaking from a script that Betsy had prepared, avoiding sensitive questions. His gaze was unfocused, his hand placed on Betsy as if clinging to a lifeline, or perhaps as if she was holding him firmly in place. By 2017, as Gene's health worsened, Leslie sensed a stark shift in power. Betsy assumed full control, making every decision on his behalf, shutting down interviews, dismissing any talk of him returning to acting, all without his input. Then came one summer night in 2019. Leslie arrived unannounced. Betsy's hesitation before opening the door sent an eerie chill through her. When she finally let Leslie in, Gene was sitting in the living room, but something was different. His eyes were vacant, his smile strained, and every word he spoke carried a quiet resignation. Betsy thinks that. Betsy told me. Betsy said I should listen. The once powerful Gene Hackman had become a mere shadow of himself. Betsy insisted that every decision, his medication, even how he would die, was his own. But Leslie wasn't convinced. She had seen the prescriptions Betsy had secured in his name, the handwritten notes in the bedroom detailing steps to ensure a peaceful passing. A chill ran through her. The question gnawed at her. Did Gene Hackman truly choose his fate? Or had Betsy made every decision for him? Then came the top-secret recording. Leslie listened, shaken, not just by the loss but by something far more unsettling. The voice she heard didn't feel like Gene Hackman's anymore. It was hollow, rehearsed, a mere echo of Betsy, a forced declaration. She didn't hate Betsy. She couldn't hate the woman who had stood by her father's side for 3 decades. But gratitude couldn't silence the nagging doubt that Gene Hackman, a man once defined by strength, may have spent his final years as nothing more than a puppet, controlled by a love that dictated his every move. And when the doors of the Santa Fe estate shut for the last time, Leslie knew the truth. The keeper of the keys had been locked inside that house, along with the secrets that would never see the light of day. Some houses never crumble, even when those who once filled them are long gone. The Santa Fe estate was one of them. It wasn't just Gene Hackman's final home. It was something more, something alive, breathing with the wind that slipped through windows never fully shut. Locals called it the Whispering House. Stories spread among neighbors, old maintenance workers, anyone who had ever seen Gene Hackman standing by the window, gazing silently at the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The whispers never faded. People believed that Gene and Betsy's presence never truly left, not as ghosts, but as echoes, memories looping endlessly like an old film reel. At midnight, footsteps creaked across the wooden floors. Doors eased open and shut on their own. Yet the estate had been locked up for years. And so, the mystery of Gene Hackman's final message remains unsolved. Does the silence conceal a truth beyond our understanding? Or is it simply another chapter in the enigmatic tale of a silver screen legend? These questions will linger forever, like a ghost that refuses to leave the Santa Fe estate. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the unknown. Don't forget to follow the channel and stay with us as we uncover more stories waiting to be unraveled. We'll continue bringing you thrilling, intriguing, and curiosity-filled tales. See you in the next video.